What if I told you that some of the things you've accepted as just getting older, the tiredness that follows you through the day, the words that slip away mid-sentence, the mornings where your body feels like it needs a warm-up period just to exist, what if those weren't inevitable at all? What if your body has been sending you specific, readable signals, and somewhere along the way we were all taught to ignore them? I'm Dr. Melina, and in the next 20 minutes, I want to walk you through 5 warning signs that appear after 50. Signs that most people dismiss, most doctors don't have time to explore, and that science now tells us are not just normal aging. They are messages, and once you learn to read them, everything changes. Now, before we begin, I want to be clear about something. This is not a video designed to frighten you. Quite the opposite. Because the most important thing longevity research has taught us in the last decade is this: decline is not a sentence, it's a direction, and directions can be changed. Here's the first thing I want you to hold on to. Aging is not a disease, but some of its symptoms behave like one, and that distinction matters enormously. There's a term researchers use: signal versus noise. Some changes after 50 are noise, harmless, natural shifts in how your body operates. But others are signals, your biology raising its hand, asking for something specific. Today, we're learning to tell the difference. And I'll tell you right now, one of the 5 signs we'll cover affects 8 in 10 people over 50, and it has nothing to do with pain or physical illness. We'll get there. Stay with me. Let's start with the one that almost everyone over 50 has experienced, and almost everyone has explained away: fatigue. Not the kind that arrives after a long hike or sleepless night. I'm talking about the fatigue that's just there. The kind that shows up even after a full night's sleep. The kind that makes a simple afternoon errand feel like a significant undertaking. If that sounds familiar, here's what I need you to hear. This is not laziness. This is not weakness. And it is almost certainly not just aging. What's fascinating is that this type of fatigue, what researchers call persistent low-grade fatigue, is often a metabolic signal. Your body's energy systems are asking for recalibration, not rest. And here's the counterintuitive part. Resting more, which is the natural, completely understandable response, can actually make this type of fatigue worse over time. Because the body's energy production system, much like a generator that hasn't been switched on in a while, needs to be activated to run efficiently. I want to tell you about someone I'll call Margaret. She was 58, a retired school teacher, and she described her days as moving through fog. She'd assumed this was simply what the second half of life felt like. She'd made peace with it. What changed everything for her wasn't a supplement or a strict diet. It was something called movement snacking, brief 5-minute bursts of gentle physical activity spread throughout the day, a short walk after breakfast, a few minutes of stretching before lunch. Within 3 weeks, the fog began to lift. We'll come back to Margaret, but first, let's talk about those moments when a word you've used 1,000 times suddenly disappears. You're mid-sentence. You know exactly what you want to say, and then nothing. The word is simply gone. Or you walk into a room with clear purpose and arrive with no memory of why. Most people laugh it off. And honestly, sometimes that's the right response. Not every memory glitch after 50 is a cause for alarm. But here's what matters. Some of them are signals worth paying attention to, and knowing the difference gives you real power. Here's the reframe I want to offer you. Your brain isn't shrinking. It isn't failing. After 50, it's actually shifting its processing style, moving from rapid reflex-based thinking towards something more deliberate and integrative. In many ways, the older brain is wiser. It's just operating on a different rhythm. But, and this is important, that shift requires maintenance. Think of it like a cognitive savings account. Scientists call it cognitive reserve. The more you deposit into it over time, the more protected your brain becomes against the withdrawals that aging can bring. What builds that reserve? Two habits, specifically, that the research supports clearly. The first is learning something genuinely new, not just consuming content, but actively acquiring a skill, a language, an instrument, a craft, anything that makes your brain work in an unfamiliar direction. The second is quality social conversation, not passive scrolling, not background television, actual back and forth exchange with another person, which exercises memory, language, and emotional processing simultaneously. And that connects to one of our 5 warning signs that I think will genuinely surprise you. We're getting close to it. But first, let's talk about sleep, because what's happening there after 50 is deeply misunderstood. You sleep 7 hours, maybe even 8, and you wake up tired. If that's your experience, you are not alone, and you are not imagining it. But here's where most people, and even many doctors, get this wrong. They focus on the quantity of sleep. The real issue, after 50, is almost always the quality, specifically the architecture of sleep itself. Let me explain what I mean. Sleep isn't a single state. It moves through stages: lighter sleep, REM sleep, and a critically important phase called slow wave sleep or deep sleep. This is the stage where your body repairs tissue, consolidates memory, and, this is the part that matters most, essentially cleans the brain. Cerebrospinal fluid moves through, clearing out cellular debris that accumulates during the day. Think of it like a biological car wash. During deep sleep, the brain runs its full cleaning cycle. But if that cycle gets interrupted or shortened, which happens naturally after 50, you wake up with the mental equivalent of a windshield that hasn't been properly cleaned. You slept, but you didn't restore. Now, here's the counterintuitive insight. Going to bed earlier in an attempt to get more sleep can actually compress this deep sleep phase further. Your body has a biological window for deep sleep, and pushing outside it disrupts the cycle. What actually helps is working with your evening environment. Dimming lights 2 hours before bed signals your brain to begin its wind-down sequence. Keeping your bedroom cool, around 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, supports the temperature drop your body needs to enter deep sleep. Small shifts, real biology, real results. And now, let's talk about your mornings, specifically what your joints are trying to tell you. You wake up, swing your legs over the side of the bed, and for a few minutes, everything feels stiff. A little protest from your knees, your hips, your hands. You move around, it eases, and you get on with your day. For most people, that's a brief, normal transition, the body warming up after hours of stillness. But here's the line that matters. If that stiffness lasts more than 20 minutes, your body is communicating something different. It's signaling inflammation. And this particular message deserves attention. Now, I want to be careful here because inflammation has become a word that carries a lot of alarm. But inflammation itself isn't the enemy. It's actually one of the body's most powerful healing tools. The problem, the real problem, is chronic, low-grade inflammation that runs quietly in the background, day after day, without ever fully resolving. Researchers have given this a name: inflammaging. It's the slow, silent accumulation of inflammatory activity that underlies much of what we associate with aging: joint discomfort, fatigue, cognitive cloudiness, and more. But here's what most people don't realize. One of the strongest drivers of morning joint inflammation isn't what you did the day before, it's what you ate the night before. The gut and the joints are in constant conversation. A dinner high in ultra-processed foods or refined sugars can amplify the body's inflammatory response overnight. 3 foods that genuinely help and that don't require a dramatic lifestyle overhaul: fatty fish like salmon or sardines, extra virgin olive oil, and dark leafy greens like spinach or arugula. Practical, affordable, and your joints will notice the difference. Now, let's get to the warning sign that surprised me the most when I first encountered the research on it. I promised you earlier that one of these 5 signs affects 8 in 10 people over 50, and that it has nothing to do with pain or physical illness. Here it is: social withdrawal. Now, before you think, that's not a medical symptom, I want you to stay with me for just a moment. Because what the research has revealed about loneliness and social isolation in the last decade has genuinely shifted the way longevity scientists think about aging. Loneliness is no longer classified as simply an emotional experience. It is now understood as a physiological stressor, one that triggers the same biological stress pathways as physical pain, raises inflammatory markers in the blood, disrupts sleep architecture, and accelerates cognitive decline. In practical terms, the body does not distinguish between the pain of a wound and the pain of prolonged isolation. Both activate the same alarm systems. And here's what makes this warning sign so easy to miss. It rarely feels like withdrawal. It feels like preference. I just enjoy my own company. I don't have the energy for socializing anymore. My world is quieter now, and that's fine. Sometimes that's genuinely true, but sometimes, and this is important, the quiet isn't preference, it's drift. Life contracts gradually after 50, and many people don't notice how small their world has become until it's been small for a long time. This was true for Margaret. Her recovery from fatigue and fog had a social dimension she hadn't expected. Reconnecting, even modestly, was part of what changed things for her. You don't need a full social calendar. Research supports what I call the minimum viable connection strategy: 2 or 3 meaningful interactions per week where you are genuinely seen and heard are enough to produce measurable biological benefits. Quality over quantity, always. Earlier, I mentioned something that I think will genuinely change how you experience your afternoons. And I want to deliver on that now. You've probably noticed it. Somewhere between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m., your energy quietly exits the room. Your focus softens. Your motivation disappears. And if you're like most people, you assume it's the food you ate at lunch, or that you didn't sleep well enough, or simply that your stamina isn't what it used to be. Here's what's actually happening, and it's surprising. This afternoon dip is not caused by lunch. It exists in people who skip lunch entirely. It has been documented in cultures around the world, regardless of diet, climate, or lifestyle. It is biological. It is a circadian rhythm signal, a brief, natural drop in core body temperature and alertness that occurs roughly 7 to 8 hours after waking. Your body is not malfunctioning. It is running a scheduled program.
What's fascinating is that fighting this signal, which is what most of us do with coffee or sheer willpower, actually compounds the fatigue and disrupts your evening sleep quality. But honoring it, even briefly, is associated in longevity research with better cardiovascular health, sharper cognition, and longer health span. The key is timing. A rest of 10 to 20 minutes during this window, not sleep, simply stillness, allows the cycle to complete without pulling you into deep sleep, which would leave you groggy and disrupt your night. A 90-minute nap, by contrast, crosses into deep sleep territory and can work against you. 10 to 20 minutes. With the timing right, it's one of the simplest gifts you can give your biology. Now, let's connect all 5 signs, because they are not as separate as they seem.
Fatigue, memory glitches, unrestored sleep, morning joint stiffness, social withdrawal. 5 warning signs that appear to have nothing to do with each other, but they do. They share a common thread, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. That thread is inflammaging, the slow, continuous hum of low-grade inflammation that runs beneath the surface after 50, quietly influencing nearly every system in the body. Let me give you an analogy that I find more useful than any chart or graph. Imagine your home has a very slow gas leak. Nothing dramatic, no smell you can clearly identify. But over months, the air quality shifts. You feel slightly off. You sleep less well. Your thinking feels less sharp. The plants don't thrive. You keep addressing the symptoms, opening windows, drinking more water, getting to bed earlier, but the underlying cause continues unaddressed. Inflammaging works the same way. It is not loud enough to trigger an alarm, but it quietly degrades the quality of every biological function it touches: energy production, memory consolidation, sleep architecture, joint health, and even your social motivation. What's fascinating and genuinely hopeful is that researchers now believe inflammaging is far more modifiable than we once thought. It is not simply the price of growing older. It is, in large part, a response to how we live. And that means we have leverage. 3 specific levers, to be precise. And when you understand how they interact, when you see that they form a loop rather than a list, the whole picture shifts. Let me show you what I mean. Sleep, movement, connection. You've heard these before, and I want to be honest with you. If I had simply listed them at the beginning of this video, you might have nodded and moved on. Because they sound familiar. They sound like advice, but they're not advice. They are biological levers. And what makes them different from a checklist is this: they operate as a feedback loop. Quality sleep reduces the inflammatory signaling that makes movement feel difficult. Regular movement improves the depth and restorative quality of sleep. Meaningful social connection lowers the cortisol response that disrupts both sleep and metabolic function. And when cortisol is lower, movement feels more rewarding, which makes you more likely to do it consistently. Pull one lever, and the others respond. Now, here's something I want you to consider carefully. The order in which you approach these levers matters, and it should be personalized to your current experience. If your most pressing symptom is fatigue, start with movement, specifically movement snacking, as we discussed. Small activations throughout the day. If your most pressing symptom is unrestored sleep, start there.
the evening light and temperature adjustments, the 20-minute afternoon rest window. If your most pressing symptom is fog, low motivation, or a quiet sense of disconnection, start with connection. One meaningful conversation this week. 1. Here's a simple self-assessment. Which of your 5 warning signs resonates most strongly? That's your lever. That's your starting point. You don't need to overhaul your life. You need to find the right thread to pull, and pull it gently, consistently, and with patience.
I want to address something that I suspect may be sitting quietly in the back of your mind right now. Is it too late for me? It is one of the most common questions I hear from people over 50. And the answer, the honest, evidence-based, unambiguous answer, is no. It is not too late. And I don't say that to be reassuring in an empty way. I say it because the research is genuinely clear on this point. Biological aging is responsive. Not completely reversible, let's be honest about that, but far more responsive to lifestyle changes than we once believed. And that responsiveness does not disappear at 50 or 60 or 70. Here's the unexpected perspective I want to leave you with. The people who age best are not the ones who try the hardest. They are not the ones with the strictest diets or the most rigorous exercise regimens. They are the ones who stopped fighting their biology and started working with it. That is the longevity mindset. It is not about discipline. It is about alignment. And here's the practical expression of that mindset, what researchers sometimes call the 1% principle. One small, sustainable improvement per week. One earlier bedtime. One walk after dinner. One phone call to someone who makes you laugh. Compounded over months, those 1% shifts create transformation that no dramatic intervention could sustain. Remember Margaret? 3 weeks of movement snacking, a couple of genuine conversations, a small adjustment to her evening routine. That was it. The fog lifted. The energy returned. She told me she felt, for the first time in years, like herself again. That is available to you. I want to leave you with a reframe that I hope stays with you long after this video ends. We have been taught to think of aging as subtraction, as loss, as a gradual dimming of everything that made us feel vital and capable and alive. But that is not what the science shows. What the science shows is adaptation. Your body after 50 is not failing. It is recalibrating, adjusting its rhythms, shifting its priorities, operating on a different but still remarkable set of instructions. The warning signs we discussed today are not evidence that your body is giving up. They are evidence that your body is communicating. It is asking for sleep that restores rather than merely passes. It is asking for movement that activates rather than exhausts. It is asking for connection that nourishes rather than depletes. It is asking you, in the most patient and persistent way it knows how, to pay attention. Your only job, and it is a genuinely achievable job, is to learn its new language. Start with one thing this week, one lever, one 1% shift. Not because you are broken and need fixing, but because you are capable and your biology is waiting to respond. If this conversation has been useful to you, I'd be glad to continue it. Next week, we'll be exploring something that connects directly to everything we've discussed today, and I think you'll find it just as surprising. Until then, be gentle with yourself, be curious about your body, and remember this: your body hasn't given up on you. It's been waiting for you to listen.